Hi, this is Steve Lowery with Long Beach Post, and I'm here with my good friend and fellow writer, Tom Hoffarth.
How you doing, Steve?
If you're watching this, you're reading Tom's terrific piece about the day that Babe Ruth got arrested in Long Beach.
What?
One of many.
It's news to me.
Tommy, we're out here on the palatial porch of the Long Beach Post offices because where it happened actually happened just across the street. Can you tell us?
It was, so there's the timeline is that after the 1926 World Series, where the Yankees played the Cardinals, the Babe and Lou Gehrig took a tour. It was mostly the Babe doing a vaudeville tour. Mm-hmm. And the State Theater right across the street here, which is now an empty parking lot right between the breakers, was the place where he was doing his last show of that tour. And some things went sideways on him. Mm-hmm. He was, just before he was going to come on stage, he was pulled into the Long Beach Police Department and told that there was a warrant for his arrest because of a issue he had a week earlier in San Diego that had to do
don't
with...
give it away. Make him read the story. Make him read the story. Read the story.
It sounds worse than it was.
Yeah.
It basically did not put a good light on him, but in that day, damage control was not a real phrase that was used, but that's what had to go into town. And I had to go into high super mode to get him so he could do his performance and then get out of town.
Yeah. Now, we heard about this story because of Jane Levy's new book, The Big Fella, yet another book about Babe Ruth. And I just think it's interesting, Tommy, that here we are. Sports celebrities have never been bigger, and yet I think you can really argue that Babe Ruth is still the biggest American sports celebrity. I think the only person who is even in his stratosphere is Michael Jordan. That's it. Why do you think Babe Ruth still resonates? Years, I mean, this happened in 1926, so we're talking more than 80 years ago.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, that was the best part about talking to Jane Levy, who wrote the book. She did a book about Mickey Mantle. She did one on Sandy Koufax. So she has a great background about baseball superstar knowledge. But the Babe is one she wanted to work on, and it took her 8 years to finish this project. But what helped her do this was all the new modern technology, where she could look up newspapers and see some baseball Hall of Fame archives that had never really been pulled out and used.
Right.
But her narrative of her book really is that the Babe was the first celebrity athlete. Mm-hmm. And her comparison to me was that he was like the Michael Jackson of his day. Mm-hmm. He took Motown and brought it to pop.
Right.
And once he crossed that barrier, he became the superstar because a lot of other people really couldn't keep up with him. He was making movies, and he was on the radio, and he was writing books, and he was writing newspaper articles, and one of the main things he did was became a pitch man for a lot of products. I mean, for everything, from underwear to rifles to anything that would have him as a salesman.
Right.
Nothing that even was particularly important to him.
Right.
So as he sort of set this template, others tried to follow, and then you had in the big names of those days, you had Jack Dempsey and Bill Tilden and a lot of great athletes in the Roaring '20s, but Babe just stood out, and maybe it was his name, maybe it was all the nicknames people made for him.
Yeah.
Maybe it was just his ability to just mix with kids. He loved to be in pictures with kids. He took the first selfies probably that were not called selfies.
Yeah.
He just loved photo ops.
Yeah.
And you forget that he died at age 54 from throat cancer.
Yeah.
And movies were made about him, and they were terrible movies, and they still are terrible movies.
William Bendix, you did not do yourself proud.
Or John Goodman.
Oh, man, that's a bad one.
So the thing that we're thinking about with this book is it might stir up another...
The funny thing is, I think one of the reasons people still like Babe Ruth is they, in their way, see it as a more innocent time.
Yes.
And as your story points out, not so innocent. It's the same old stuff of celebrities getting in trouble, and then basically fixers coming in and cleaning stuff up. In fact, Tommy, across the street here is the Long Beach Performing Arts Center, and I think this weekend, Snoop Dogg, who is Long Beach's most famous son, will be there. If ever there's a guy who has proven that he can take a fall and get up and reinvent himself, it's that he really is kind of he's Ruthian in that way.
So the best part about this book is it uncovers, the stories about him in Long Beach in 1927 on a couple different trips. Some people may have known about it, but what Jane was able to sort of dig a little deeper, get into police reports, get into Christy Walsh was his agent at the time, a former sports writer, and she got into his letters and got to read about how he sort of managed this situation.
Right.
And it's really kind of a fun read just to revisit it all.
Tom and I are old sports writers, and there's a famous story sports writers like to tell about how things have changed. By the time he and I were writing, there was a lot of scrutiny. You did your due diligence when it came to journalism, but there's a story about Ruth about how that was different in his day, that there were a bunch of sports writers sitting in a train car, and all of a sudden Babe Ruth comes running through the train completely naked, and they kind of look. About 5 seconds later, a woman completely naked comes running with a knife after him, and they wait and they don't say a thing. They look at each other and they say, "Man, too bad we didn't see that."
Yes.
So that's how things have changed.
As Jane was telling me, the sports writers of those days were the enablers. They were the protectors of the image because he gave them so much copy. They didn't want to kill the golden goose.
They were their Mario Lopez. So there you go. By the way, one of the reasons we wanted to run this piece was that Babe Ruth, today, if you're reading this on Friday, the day it was published, is being given posthumously. He's dead. I don't know. I hope I'm not shocking anyone.
Not to give away
the Medal of Freedom, the highest
Presidential Medal of Freedom.
The highest honor a civilian can get.
Right.
Besides, of course, winning Best Director at the Oscars. And it's...
Or having your own reality show.
I'm just throwing this out there. He's being given it by President Trump, who a couple weeks ago lost the House of Representatives. He then announced that he was giving the Medal of Freedom to Babe Ruth,
Yes.
Elvis, and Roger Staubach.
Yeah.
There's something that links all three of those, of how they look, and they're certainly
I think he sort of thinks he was created in their image.
They certainly resonate with a certain part of the population.
Yes.
Just putting it there. Anyway, Shai, it's a great piece. Please have a look. Tommy, thanks for coming by.
Glad to do it.
Love showing off our offices. We'll see you later. Thanks.